Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name's Sophie Heath. I'm a senior editor at Adam Matthew. I'm currently overseeing the publication of our really exciting project on the Gilded Age and progressive era. So to give you a brief summary of the project, the term Gilded Age was coined by Mark Twain in his seminal novel, The Gilded Age, A Tale of Today, which played on the failure of the expected golden era of Reconstruction after the Civil War in America. The term was used to describe the enormous wealth, power, and excess of the elite, who became the first ever self-made millionaires in the US, fueled by the vast profits of rapid industrialisation and the expansion of railways. The rise of these people was aided by rife political corruption and not yet restrained by antitrust laws, which allowed enormous monopolies to develop. This wealth and success of the few covered up endemic poverty and social unrest, and the problems led to a widespread reform movement from the 1890s to the 1920s. This period is known as the progressive era, and the time saw extensive social activism and was the breeding ground for prohibition, women's suffrage, and other moral, social, and political reforms. It was also during this period that some of the key Gilded Age captains of industry started donating profits on a massive scale, so we see a rise in extensive philanthropy and the founding of institutions such as the Newberry Library, the Art Institute of Chicago, and great universities. This project will document the period, allowing research into personal and business papers of key industrialists and corporations, coverage of the social calendar and women's voices of the era, records covering politics and court cases, and rich visual content on fashion, material culture, and architecture. Here you can see the archives and libraries whose fantastic collections are being included in the project, ranging from the records of railway and steel industries at Hagley Museum and Library to political cartoons from New York Historical Society and really rich visual content from Winterthur and from Newport Historical Society. You can also see some of the key themes in the project, and it ranges from the industrial advances of the period through to politics and corruption, poverty, charity, society and events, and labour history. I wanted to pick out a few documents to highlight really from the project. There's an awful lot that can be discovered in it, but something that I found particularly interesting are the papers that relate to the fall of William Boss Tweed. For those of you who don't know, Boss Tweed controlled New York politics for decades. He served in the House, the Senate, he had various city government positions, and he was the head of Tammany Hall, the infamous Democrat political machine that reigned over New York City for almost 2 centuries. Tammany Hall was historically associated with lobbying for the rights of the poor and immigrants, and was particularly associated with the cause of Irish immigrants throughout its history. However, during this particular period, it became synonymous with corruption during Tweed's tenure. Tweed and his cronies were known as the Tweed Ring, and they embezzled from city funds on a massive scale, accepting bribes and overseeing public works across the city that lined the pockets of their allies, including New York icons such as the Brooklyn Bridge, the Met Museum, and City Hall. The Tweed Ring had popular support as they employed immigrants in construction projects while stealing money from the city. Anyone who opposed them was killed or bought off, and they had the state and Supreme Court justice systems on their payroll. By the 1870s, however, Tweed's power was waning, and he was finally brought down in 1873, charged with 55 criminal offences, including embezzlement of what would be billions of dollars in today's money. We have several collections in this project which we can explore the story of Boss Tweed, so that's including the papers of William Marcy Tweed, which include letters from him during his term as a US representative in Congress, correspondence and checks between him and James Ingersoll, which were used as evidence in the Tweed versus Ingersoll case. You can see a letter on the slide in his hand asking James Ingersoll to drop his suit against him because physically and financially he was in trouble. You can also see an example of a check from the collection, which in today's money is made out to nearly $2 million, which seems an enormous sum for one particular check. Also in the collections, we have the papers of Henry Fox Tainter, which concerns the gathering of evidence against the Tweed Ring. We also have some fantastic political cartoon collections by several different artists, including Joseph Kepler and Thomas Nast. And these particularly demonstrate Nast's campaign against Tweed. He's often given credit for undermining Tweed's hold over the city of New York. He drew attention to the level of corruption and resulted in Tweed's downfall eventually. In fact, when Tweed was on the run from the justice, it was a Thomas Nast cartoon that helped Spanish police to identify him and bring him to justice. There is so much more to this wide-ranging project, but hopefully this has given you a very small insight into the exciting things to come. I look forward to sharing the rest of it with you at some point later this year.
And a question for Sophie, actually. If possible, could you tell us a bit more about some of the visual content mentioned in the Gilded Age and Progressive Era collection?
Hi Hans, yes, of course I can do that. So yes, I mentioned we've got some fantastic cartoon collections, but we also have an enormous number of photographs. These cover things like high society balls, you know, the Vanderbilt costume balls, things like that. Street photography in Newport, Rhode Island, so you can see all the fabulous mansions. Well, they called them cottages, but they were mansions that were built for sort of summer houses, really, in Rhode Island. We've got other photographs to do with architecture and urban development, particularly in Chicago, but also in New York. Photograph albums relating to families such as the Rockefellers, looking at leisure and entertainment, performers, so theatre performances, musicians, that kind of thing. And then also some fantastic collections coming out of Hagley to do with the railways and the industrial sites. So you really get quite a broad photographic record really of this period. Alongside that, we also have blueprints and maps relating to the industries, railway, steel, coal mining, that kind of thing. There's also dinner books which contain seating plans for dinner parties, which is an interesting kind of insight into the social scene as well. That's just a few things that are off the top of my head really, but there's some brilliant content coming up in the project.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. There's another question actually for the Gilded Age project. Who are the key industrialists whose papers have been digitized as part of it?
I guess the key industrialist really is J.D. Rockefeller of Standard Oil fame. So we're digitizing a lot of papers from the Rockefeller Archive Centre, which cover his business work and his involvement in industry, also covering his huge philanthropic endeavours as well. Alongside him, we've got papers to do with Jay Gould and Chauncey Mitchell Depew. They were members of the Tweed Ring, so the slant on those, I suppose, is looking at the kind of the corruption side of their industrial endeavours, but they're there as well. And then records relating to companies such as Pennsylvania Railroad, Bethlehem Steel, Delaware, Lackawanna and Western Railroad Company, others like that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sophie.